Hey everybody, it is Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to show you in less time than you think how you can create for yourself at home, step by step, fully explained, this gorgeous pine tree painting. Now, if you've been wondering how to paint snow, or you've been wanting to paint a tree that's not just the typical snowy pine tree, this is such a great class. And of course I have the typical snowy pine tree that's super easy to paint because I love beginners and I focus on teaching beginners. So if you are a beginner, you're going to love this. Now, in the description, you're going to find some extra resources. You're going to see the materials that I've used in the show written out, including the brushes. You're also going to see links to my website, and on there are your traceables. I'm going to show you how to lay every part of this out freehand. But of course, I provide a traceable and let you know when you would use that if you're just not ready to jump all the way in. We've got lots of resources, so no matter where you are in your art journey, the support that you need is here. And this lesson is based on a bunch of requests, so I'm excited to see what you guys think of it because it's a little bit different, and I think it's gonna be super fun. And for some of you, it's gonna be like, oh, this is exactly what I needed. So all of your favorite stuff is here. You can check the scheduling on this to see like where it is again. So everything's gonna be broken into steps. Now, on a step, guys, last and important instructions is this before we go over materials. When we do steps, if I'm drawing my canvas, I will try to always tell you what you're going to want to do on live shows, replay, premiere shows, and replay shows is that when I'm drawing, you just pause and dry your own canvas. And then when you're dry, then you hit play. And that's a great way for us to paint together. And remember that you may have very different painting speed than me. That'll be funny later. But in all seriousness, you take your time, slow down. It is not about keeping up with this video. It is about using this video to support your painting process. Because I'm not about teaching you to paint like me. You're not me, you're you. And so I'm not showing you how I paint. I'm showing you how you can paint, showing you the artist that you can be. So take a deep breath, let it out. When we come back, I'm going to show you the brushes and materials that we're using. So today's brushes are a number 8 Raphael Precision Bright. It's a pretty small bright. I've got the Princeton 3/4 inch angle brush from the Catalyst line. I have a number 1 Princeton round select liner. I've got the number 12 Raphael Textura and the Raphael number 6 Sepia. All those brushes again are in the description, and the rest of the materials are. On today's surface, we have an 8x8. I've got the wish that you dream big and you realize your dreams here on my canvas. Paint over that, and that just goes into the universe. I've got the colors yellow ochre, cad yellow medium, cad red medium, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, burnt sienna, Mars black, in the center is titanium white. As we're painting, I may put out satin glazing liquid to improve blendability, to let me glaze, and also to slow the drying time down of the paint. But only this brand, this color, like this brand, this is the only one that does that. You'll see me mist with water, and I am maybe going to do some snow splatter with fluid paint. Over here on the side, this is just water. This is just a water bucket, nothing else. And we added this so that you could see us rinse out the brush. All right, when we come back, we'll just jump right on into this fun lesson. I think you're going to be surprised at how easy it is to do. So in this first step, I'm going to paint the entire canvas a singular color. This is called an acrylic ground, and basically it's just a blue tone to the whole canvas. There isn't a special trick about it. It's just painting everything blue so that when we layer, that builds up a richness of color. This is ultramarine blue, and my wish on here is an ultramarine blue. So I'm going to come right on over, and I will just paint that out. All solid blue. You do that with me, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do next. So to go over that again, what I've done is I have painted the entire canvas, including the sides, with ultramarine blue. I'm now going to dry this thoroughly with my hair dryer and get it ready for the next step. If you are here on the premiere or the replay, remember you put me on pause until your canvas is dry, and then we start back up together. Now for step 2, what I'm going to want you to do is take a deep breath. Let it out. Because we're doing great. You're doing perfect. Now, this is a stage where you could use your traceable and transfer the line image on, or you can sketch in the basic placement with me. Either way is acceptable. I'm using a number 12 Raphael Textura brush. This is in the shape of a bright, and it's just a nice brush to sort of lay out and sketch with. You could use a round or a lot of other different brushes, so don't feel like this is the only one. Now I'm going to come over and get a little bit damp in my water, and I'm going to mix my ultramarine blue and my phthalo blue together. I actually do like to mix these together. I feel like they give me almost a cerulean blue, and I just enjoy the result. But you could do just one. Now I'm adding white. You can see I'm thoroughly incorporating that, and I'm going to come up here and make a little mark on the right-hand side of the canvas up a good bit past the halfway point. And I will just come here sketching over from the right towards the left. And I'll make a downward little slope here. And that's because we've got a little bit of an embankment that does slope down in that way. Now, coming from over here is another little downward embankment. So now we're starting to create this world that our tree might possibly live in. And we know that down here, below here, is the landscape, and up here in the background is the distant sky and forest and storm that's slightly out of focus. Now, I can take a minute and lay in my tree right now. So I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt sienna and my Mars Black together with my same brush. You can see I'm mixing them together, making a chocolatey brown. And I'm going to come on the left hand side of the canvas, and I'm going to make a little slightly angled mark. And what I'm doing is I'm helping my brain know where my tree needs to be on the canvas so it doesn't accidentally plant it off of the canvas or on top of the canvas. Sometimes, believe it or not, we will put objects in very strange places considering how much room we have in our picture plane. Now this is a fairly vertical tree, so I'll go ahead and make a vertical line going up. And it will be slightly thicker at the base than it is coming up. And really, this is the root, the rooty root, and I even go down a little bit more, of our composition. That's how our tree has become the focal point of this. Now I overpainted there. That's okay though, because I am going to be adding a lot of paint. You can paint around the sides of a painting, but you don't have to. Okay, that's all you need to do for that step. I do want to dry everything before I go on. And once again, just last reminder to, while you're drying your canvas, to be putting me on pause before you hit play again. Now I want to show you in my Fabriano multimedia pad the colors that we're going to be mixing. Sometimes it helps you guys to see these on white paper so you can see how they look, how light, dark, what their hue is. So I'm going to take a little bit of my ultramarine and my phthalo blue, and I'm going to grab some burnt sienna into that, and it's going to give me a kind of stormy gray. And you see that there, little stormy gray. I'll take some of the darker, little darker. Let's go lighter with that too. Sometimes you can add more brown into the mix, right? I'll show you gray it a little more. You can see how adding brown in does gray. So we're just getting a little range of these values. And then the other one I'm going to want to do, I just wiped off, is just add a lot more white to the mix. and be going even as light as right here. So we're going to be doing a lot of ranges of these. And the mix again is phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, a little burnt sienna to gray or green it, and titanium white to lighten it. I'm going to be doing my darkest values over here on the left hand side. It'll get really rich here, and I'm going to continue to lighten it as I come over here. I'm going to be using brush strokes that are shorter, and I'm going to keep using this brush, the number 12 Textura, for this next bit because I'm wanting to do these brush strokes. Now first we're going to just go together a little ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and burnt sienna, and I will come over here and start to make short little marks. Now that I've added these dark values, I can begin to add white to my color mix, making short little brush strokes into my dark space. On the left-hand side, I've used my darkest value in its next lighter color to create an area of shadow. As I go through here, I'm going to continue to add more white, sometimes with a little more blue, sometimes with a little more brown. That is looking really good. So I used my darker mixes over here. When I wanted to deepen it, I added more blue and more brown and less white. And then as I came over here, I added a little more brown, a lot more white, and sometimes a little blue to cool it. And we do have some of the underneath shining through, but it's giving us that cool blue that we're looking for. Now I want to dry everything. You're going to love drying everything. We're going to dry everything. When we come back, we're going to paint the next step. Well, this is looking pretty good, but it needs another layer. So what I'm going to do is show you your next color mixes. These are our more grade ones. Now I'm going to be working maybe a little more of my phthalo blue into the sky mix. So there's hints of the previous mix in it, but it's much more blue. And then I will be adding white. Now, we might still come in and get a little burnt sienna to do what's called knocking it back or desaturating, but for the most part, we're going to be working within these blues. And then I'll show you a little bit with the brown so you can see how that's going to look in there. And you can see if I get even a little more brown and white that we're getting several different colors. Now, the other thing is on these brush strokes, they're going to be very loose and almost a scumble, and I want you to kind of pay attention to how I'm using this brush. I've got a corner here, and I'm just almost scribbling. And sometimes I'm going to make short little strokes, and I will hatch them into each other. I'm going to be working my value, how light or dark it is, into my depth, and then also playing with that texture. So those are a little bit of two little balls skill-wise to juggle, but I think you're going to be able to handle it. You're going to be able to do that great. I'm going to go ahead and, now it needs to be the darker blue for you to really see it. So let's go over that again. Scribble, 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 scribble. Kind of get that energy going there. So that's what we're doing. Let's see how it looks on our canvas when we take that skill over here. So I'm going to wipe my brush off on a paper towel. That way I don't have so much pigment. Maybe get a little more brown into it. Mixing it fairly thoroughly, incorporating over here. And I'll just start to do my lighter value up here. And it's still going to be darker going back. I'm going to leave these brush strokes open. I will try to randomize, make irregular the patterns. There I am using that corner. Going darker and darker as I'll go back. A little more into the blue here. And you can see that's pretty subtle. You get into that little phthalo blue. But that blue cast gets into the color and gives that feeling of winter. Kind of down there. I will also want it lighter in blue through here. So let's do that. Now, as I'm going back, I'm going to continue to add more pigment, more blue, and more brown to deepen the color, but continue the kind of playful, irregular brush stroke. Sometimes I'll add more ultramarine blue and more burnt sienna. Coming back through here, I'm going to go back into my darker colors, building up layers. So that was our burnt sienna and our ultramarine blue and a little phthalo blue, and we'll work our dark colors again. Can see I kept that value specifically right here dark. Come into a little more blue and work it the rest of the way through. So what you should have at the end is a very gray blue sky that has energetic, rough brush strokes that don't really specifically have a pattern, right? So your eye isn't caught somewhere in a check pattern or stripe pattern. And you have a light value at the base and lighter here, becoming darker in the left corner. When we come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. Continuing on with my number 12 Raphael Textura, I'm going to lay in or block in or kind of rough out some more of my landscape. A lot of times in painting, we generalize color, value, line, texture, shape, form in the painting in a loose way where we haven't really given it a lot of attention, and then we come back and resolve it more and more as we paint. So I'm going to take my brown and my Mars black together. And I'm going to come underneath this little bend on that lip and maybe talk a bit about what could be a boulder peeking through. Boulders are rough. I'm going to add another little bit of stone that could be coming through here. One towards the back right. This is again just burnt sienna in Mars black. And let's make a weird little shape here. Stones are just blurby shapes. That's a very technical true story, especially in the Clasid method of painting to refer to stones as blurby shapes, but they are. I'm going to add another little stone there. Maybe a smidge there. So it's just kind of a nice arrangement. You want to make a nice arrangement of stones. And while I'm at it, I can come back with my brown and think about my tree just a little bit more again. Thickening up that trunk. Just long strokes down the trunk. And then towards the back, I'm adding a little more black onto my brush. At the base of the tree and towards the back left side of the tree, I'm going to just slightly darken it. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, my burnt sienna, and make my favorite gray. Add some white to my favorite gray. And just very carefully paint that back hill. Sometimes it's just enough to cover the canvas with the color. I'm painting around my stones and my objects, and it's loose and rough. So what you have at the end when you're done painting in the snow is a very blue-gray landscape happening here with dark shapes that represent your stone and the tree coming up. Now I want to dry everything before I start adding my lighter and darker values for the next layer. Remember to take a deep breath, let it out. Remember, paintings have awkward stages like people, and give your painting enough time to get all the way to the end, because that's when you're going to see how beautiful it is and how incredible you did, but you got to not give up on yourself too soon. So I want you to hang in with me. Deep breath. We come back, next layer. For the next step, I am going to get out my number 8 Raphael Precision Bright. It's just a smaller, tinier, sharper bright, and I'm going to start thinking about my rocks a little bit more. I'm going to get all rocky about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the mixes for the rocks. I will put those here, and let's go there and get my little brush. I like to start my rocks with kind of an orange. I'll go a little more yellow and show you what I mean. So if I take my orange right here and then I start to work in the burnt sienna, it gives me a lot of ranges. And then as soon as I get my black involved, and I don't even have to rinse out, you can see I start getting right into this fabulous range of tree values. And then on top of that, I can come in up here into my snow mixture, believe it or not, and get some great gray tones for the tree as well. So you're going to see me be doing that. We'll go over it again. We start with an orange and we're adding burnt sienna, and then we're going to add Mars black when we want to deepen it. We can take our dirty brush with any of these colors and go over into our gray mixture from earlier and create some interesting colors for the trees. So let's put that on the tree right now, see how that will look. And the rocks. This is rocks and trees. What's nice about this is this will be everything sort of color range. So I'm going to begin with my orange again on my brush, kind of swirling around. And I will come up to the top of the tree, and I'm making short, tiny little brush strokes on the right-hand side of that tree. A little more brown into that mix. I'm incorporating it together. And again, short little brush strokes. These are short little vertical brush strokes. You can see them a little better when they open up right there. Come here. I'll highlight there. Add a highlight there. Couple little highlight shapes there. Go into my black. I like to add more black where I think my stones will have more shadows. I'm going to add some black to the underneath. Got brown and black on my brush right now. And I'm just looking for places to just make it seem like the light is blocked. Add a little more of my yellow, one orange into that mix. A little on the top, a little forward. So just creating those little planes on the stones. Let's call that a step. Let's take a deep breath. And we look at it. Take a minute, take it in, take care of your body if you need to right now. Make sure you're in a good body position. You know, taking care of your health is very important because you can really get into the zone when you're painting and just drift away and not realize that you've been sitting there for 4 hours. So it's important to listen to your body because you're a team with it when you're doing a painting. When we come back, we're going to continue on. I do recommend drying everything. I'm going to do that so I don't drag my paint everywhere. So in this next step, what I'm going to be doing is laying in some of my snowbank. I'll just keep using my little 8. It's a great little bright, and I like it for this. My gray is my ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna. That's going to be my snowbank gray, and add white to it. Let's come here and start to make short little planar strokes. These kind of start to show how, you know, even snow, the landscape, everything has little angles, and those little angles can inform shadows. So it'll be a little darker right there. It's kind of the gray we've already painted in. Go in and just add a little more white to get a slightly lighter value. Maybe come up here. And sometimes I like to pull my brush back. I like to think of rough little clumps of snow. That's what I tend to think of as I just think about the shape. Like, what is it? It's like a little blanket. It's a clumpy, fine blanket of snow. Now right here under the rock, I can kind of roughly put that there. I might even go into my darker gray. That's my ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna, and it's much darker. And I'll come right here and maybe add some shadow. Dark value under this. Here, and then definitely around that tree. Little rough, loose, open shapes. And remember, be sure and like go by, you know, how I tell you at the beginning, everything is in the description, and you can go by the website and check that out. But go by the website and definitely print out a reference from our website of this picture so you have it there too. Like the picture in picture is wonderful, but sometimes it's nice to be able to see it really, really up close, and it helps you through that. Just adding a little bit of gray here. A little bit of blue and brown and gray here. You're doing fantastic. So you can see that we're adding dark shadows. If I get a little more of my white involved into my gray, I can begin to highlight the hill. If I go a little more into my blue and brown, I can come in on my bank here a little bit and say, oh, you've got a little bit of shadow cast from it, and then weight that bank more. So the cool snow, the blue-gray snow is the snow and shadow, and then the light gray snow is the snow and light. Got this. Just keep building up those layers. It's a lighter value. You can see just trying to preserve that dark gray. What's super important for you to notice is that the snow is not white. Keeping it still in shadow where the tree and the hill would block the brightest light. That's why we're keeping these colors in blues. I'm just going to keep pulling this across here. Notice that I randomize. I change up my brush strokes. I make them different. I don't lay them in the same pattern. They have angles. They change direction. Some are bigger. Some are smaller. Going to pull a very big bright highlight there above that rock. So what you'll want to have there is your rock should have a blue-gray kind of value in the snow where light might be blocking, you know, just because they're a solid object and the light can't shine through it. And then in areas where the snow might receive more light, it's going to be a slightly brighter value with maybe a little more blue cast to it. And that's how we're playing with the blue shadows, these blue-gray shadows, and these highlights on the snow. But you can see very little of it is just like bright white, right? Try to focus your white to the tops of things. And even beyond the reference, try to think about why that might be lighter than something next to it. Okay, when we come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. You're doing so good. Take a deep breath. And we're going to keep painting together. I'm going to want to add some of my finer details of branches now, and that's going to be doing some line work and some things that you might find challenging. So I want to do a demonstration so you can see what's going on. I'm going to use a small detail brush. This is a #1 Princeton liner, so that's a pointed detail. I'm going to get it wet, and I'm going to go into my black, and I thin my black with a little bit of water. And I have a tendency to roll the brush, and the brush strokes are going to be wiggly and irregular, and they should wander and taper. So they should be thicker at one side, getting smaller at the other. I may actually have to wear my glasses. And if you are someone who wears glasses, on the detail stuff, don't make your eyes strain. It's really bad for them. So if you feel them straining, get a vision enhancer set like I have done. And come here and see how I verge those out. Now, this is the Fabriano 1264 multimedia pad, and what's nice about these is you can test swatches out, you can practice brush strokes, you can do watercolors, pencils, oil pastel, every medium, and acrylic. So it's very nice to have around. Notice that this one I am very kind of bent and twisted and gnarled. You don't want to make chicken feet unless you're making chicken feet or you're intentionally doing that. So it's going to be a lot of this working. Remember, tree branches can't be thicker than what they're attached to, and they're in perspective. Sometimes they come to us and they go away. So we're definitely going to want to do that. We're going to be doing this. I will show you this real fast. Let's get our brush loaded. The other thing is to pay attention to, like, you know, that you have lots of little deadfall and interesting little stories in the tree about things that might have happened over the course of the year. I'm going to stop from the top and go to the bottom. I'm not doing the leaves yet. We are just starting to think about branches. Okay, brush first. I like to make sure that there's some branches that come up down from the upward picture plane so that we can believe in our tree past this moment. You can see that it's really important to interweave and create a sense of that there are branches closer to us, facing us, behind the tree, around the tree, in a circumference around the tree. So be playful, give yourself time to put in all the little branches that tickle your fancy. It's also nice at the base to start thinking a little bit about the roots, which paint very similarly to the branches. I'm adding little short brush strokes and texture and roughness to this wild tree, just out in nature, doing its little tree things, being awesome. Being its fabulous, awesome tree self. That's what it's doing. It's thinking about it. Okay. So you should have a nice little collection of branches here. Have a sense of where these things are going out. It also at this stage will give you a sense of value because we've got to have enough value where we can add some snow to these. And we want to be able to show their shape. So we're thinking about how light or dark this is, and if it's going to give us nice contrast. That's how, like, the shift between that light and dark between these two. And so when we come back, we're going to evaluate that. We're going to take a deep breath because we're doing so good. Pat ourselves on the back because we're amazing. You're amazing. And then we'll continue on to the next step. I'm going to keep working out and resolving some of this background and snow, add some layers to my branches before I get my, like, beautiful conifer branches out. So let's improve the snowbank. I'm back into my bright, my number 8, and we're going to continue to lighten our snow color, which we remember is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So our snow color, and then we add white to lighten it. Let's really, really lighten it, though. And come up to the top of this and add an even lighter bank of snow. And that's much lighter. Kind of rinse that out a bit. Mixing thoroughly. And then perhaps the top of that hill. And come in a triangular piece. And then we're going to want to definitely raise a little light here. So kind of curve that. A little bit loosely there, and you can kind of see that this creates a sense of light cascading in. I think I want to create kind of like a little highlight there, just a little bit of light coming in. And I think that I could go a little more into my blue over here, playing with this some. I'm searching for just some more value in contrast between. A little bit of a highlight there. I'm going to flick this up to sort of imply maybe that some snow is blowing. Kind of curl that back. A little bit more there, and I think I'll kind of adding some. These are like a calligraphy type of stroke, and I'll show you this on the paper when I'm done. I'm dancing around. We did them a little bit before, but this type of mark can create the sense that wind is moving something, that something is in motion, and it's really rather a delight to be able to get into, to use in work. So I often pull it out and play with it a bit as an idea. See that there? Just little marks, little moments. We're going to put it to the side. And then while this is having a dry, I want to come in and I want to add some snow to these branches and some wood. Mostly snow. I will highlight some of the branches or paint them specifically. Like, let's go through right now and let's take a little bit of our yellow ochre and our burnt sienna and come a couple of places on our branches. And kind of add a little bit of interest there. Like we can come on the root and be above it a bit. You don't want everything to have any kind of brown and dimensionality and all that peeking through. But the thing is that stuff weathers, it ages out, it gets in the sun, it gets sun bleached. And so when you're painting little branches, it's easy to forget to give them the attention to detail that you would to anything else that you've got. I can even come in with a little brown. You know, for some of it, the majority of the contrast is the black until you get the snow on. So that's the other thing. Playing with that. See how I'm adding little bits of burnt sienna and yellow ochre to create some dimensionality in my branches. Thoughtful. I'm rinsing out thoroughly. Gonna dry off with a towel because I don't want my hidden drop. And what's my snow color? It is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and titanium white. So I'm going to get my first lightest color. And then I'm going to come up over all of these with a layer of blue that sometimes will be thicker and thinner. That's because it's like, how did the snow lay on here? I might even come in and lump and bump some of it up. So I'm doing little short brush strokes that will lump and bump some of it up. Let's come down here and say, oh, you kind of fell down into the snow there. Lump and bump some of it up. I'm going to have to go back with black. So now we're starting to create little snowbanks on those little trees. Look at this, guys. We're just going to build up that snow. When we add a little snow up the tree, we start to create that roundness, like, oh, a branch got caught there, or, you know, and it starts to make our mind think of the tree in the three-dimensional space it lives in. Spending time painting the dead wood has big payoffs in the end of the painting. I've got lots of branches, I've got lots of details to do, but having this is this beginning architecture where I have my black branch and I've highlighted it with some brown and some yellow ochre, and then I come in with my shadow snow color, the lighter of my shadow snow color, so that I still have room to do maybe even 2 or 3 highlights on these as I put in the other branches. So this is like what's really fun, is that there's more room for all of this to come together. When we come back, I'm going to show you the next step. So for this next step, I want to demonstrate something to you about the way that we're going to be expressing some of this. When we do the pine needles, and I'll do these in black right now, I'm going to take I'll probably do them all in this number 6 Raphael Sepia, but it's just a really good pointed round. Now, one way that I'm going to see the pine needles is in the forward-facing fan. So if you think about one of them coming straight down, and then at the tip of the branch, it fans out like this, right? We're fanning them out like this. It kind of does that puff. Whereas you might come to the end of a branch, some of them might be in perspective and fanning around like this here. Remember that the needles aren't always evenly dispersed on a branch. So they're not all, like, there'll be some of the branch that will be all woody and then come down here and then there'll be little needles. Now, the other thing, after we get the dark silhouette of the needle in, and mostly we're going to be doing a pretty dark color for the shadow of it, and then we'll build up at least 3 values. But it's going to be just really important to be able to get that little feathering out even before we snow everything, just because it builds the architecture for what makes our tree look like a tree. The other thing is, if you're having any trouble with the flick, it's okay to practice. Try to remember that these things will be messy. See how I kind of paint them wild and messy, and they're a little bit of a taper and a flick at the end. So same branch process, a little bit of a flick and a taper at the end. And it's about trying to grow somebody that feels like, oh yeah, they definitely have enough of this to take care of themselves. Let's show you a couple on the canvas, and then we'll get really into it. I'll show you kind of like a... So here's when it's a little bit challenging on the canvas, because we've got a branch that will come over towards the side, but some of this is forward facing to us. So I'm going to come here and make a little poof that flares out like we talked about, and then going back, and I'll just do this with the black because I can come back later with lighter colors. It's hard sometimes to get the depth of value when I need it. Flicking here, and you can see how I try to keep it wild and unruly. Wild and unruly is super duper important. And this particular one, we don't really see any of the wood in it. We see the needles and we see the snow. So it's pretty chill for us to do that. And that's sort of the silhouette that we're looking for. Let's try it again in a couple other areas. Let's come down here and say that there is a really involved branch. Let's make it this one. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making this a heavier little branch. And we'll say that there'll be some coming forward. And then maybe even a step over from that. And I'm just thinking about all the different little places that I could put in my needles. And I will go ahead and start to flick these out. And I'm going to be building branches here, here. There'll be some coming through the mid-tree and over to the right here. I'm going to be running some mid-tree and over to the left here. And then it's going to be left and right branches here, leaving just enough trunk for us to be able to really enjoy painting some texture and really give it a wood feel, but not so much of these that we don't even know what they're attached to. It's like a nice balance. Let's get that in there. And once we have the architecture, the silhouette, then we can start putting in the values. So what we're going to want to have is a lot of open space that shows us the trunk, staggered bunches of deciduous leaves that would be getting nice sunlight and converting it into energy for this tree. But beyond that, by making these really unusual branch shapes and by having all this wonderful little space where the branches are, we have a lot of nice positive and negative space. And that makes this tree so interesting that suddenly this becomes a topic worthy of painting, not just a tree that we ran into in the woods. So let's dry everything thoroughly and then I'll show you what you're going to do next. Now through here, I really want to give my trunk some love. And my branches some love. I might even get in my rocks. I'm going to keep using this same round brush because there's no need to change. I'm going to be making my bark colors again, but I'm going to want to really add more oranges and more browns to it. I'm going to want it to be lighter, kind of on this right-hand side and darker there, and a little darker, you know, maybe under branches and things. So, and we want it to feel like a rough, peeling, kind of sheddy bark. Sheddy bark. I don't know if you've seen that shedding bark. Have you ever done that with the nails and it goes, it's really nice and it has deep rivulets to allow the water to come down. It's fascinating. So we definitely want to get into that. I'm going to get into a little bit of my red and yellow to make orange. I'll go ahead and add my burnt sienna into it. And kind of in the mid-range of this, make little tiny, see how short these brush strokes are? And let me actually even show you on the pad of paper, because I don't want you to not know like how short we're looking. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to show you what we're trying to do. Aren't these just tiny little delicate little brush strokes? This is how fussy we're going to be. All like the little strokes are going to be like this at the biggest and that kind of at the smallest. So biggest, smallest. That's what I'm going to be alternating. Lighter on the right side, darker on the left. Let's start with this color and really let our brains relax and our bodies relax. And be like, I can do dashes. Yeah, you can do dashes. I'm going to focus these mostly in the middle, and then I will open them up to like a few here and there on the outer edges, but they're mostly going to be heavily concentrated at the middle of the tree. Once I have the red ones in, I'm going to mix a lot of yellow and maybe even yellow ochre into my brush. I'm going to add a little white to it, and then I'm going to come here and over on my right hand side, these will be more concentrated and they'll go a little bit to the middle. They won't really even go at all to the back. And I will weave them in between my branches if I need to robust my tree. In other words, thicken it out a little bit so it just feels like this is a tree strong enough to hold the branches that it has. Then I will do that there, weaving in and out of what I've already painted where I need to. So when I have my bark highlight color mostly focused on the right, I bring it around to a couple of branches just to make sure that I'm not creating something that exists in only one zone and for reasons that the viewer would struggle to understand. Now I'm going to come back here and create my shadow bark, which is my burnt sienna and my Mars black. And we're going to concentrate those dots on this left side and bring them through as well. And then finally, I want to take some of my basic bark color here over to my snow color. I'm going to get a little bit of that on there. You can kind of see it makes it interesting. You're not even sure of it at first. It is definitely grayed, but just dash a couple of those through. It's just nice for continuity. And sometimes I do like to bring it around a couple places, but not too much here. And I will be just tapping up and down. I'm just trying to bury my stones a little bit. Sometimes you will see me mooge around things with my fingers, just kind of smidge them and mooge them and go. Now I want to dry everything, and then I'm going to come back and do some pine needles. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to work out the green on the pine needles. And the basic green is going to be a phthalo green and burnt sienna. That'll be the dark pine color. And it kind of layers over the black that we did as a shadow to begin with. All right, so I'll kind of come over this. And I'm just doing this here so you can really see it happening even on the white paper, away from the visual busyness of the painting. So these are the deepest, darkest colors of the pine needles: burnt sienna and phthalo green. And then I'll come in, and it goes right over the black pine needles. And I'm just showing you across all the ones that I've pre-done, so you have sort of an idea what it looks like, you know, outside of the construct of the painting. Because sometimes when things are in a painting, the colors around it impact it and make it a different color to your eye. I'm not saying it's a blue dress, gold dress moment. Don't worry. I'm just saying that it can impact your eye. Now, if I add a little yellow to the mix, this is my next color up. I can add a little yellow. Just a bit here and there. It's a building process, and I think that's the important thing to realize, is that it is a building process. Where things are more in shadow, you will let the darker colors remain, and where things are more in light, you're going to pull in more of the light. Now, if I come in and add a lot more yellow over here and some brown, that's going to give me kind of a very light and green gold. You can see I'm going to put this over here, much lighter than what's there. And it doesn't even have any snow added to it yet. We're just building up the dimensionality of the needles. And then don't forget that you add white as well to continue to lighten. Now, I don't add the white until I have added the yellow to my lightest yellow green, and then I can get white involved. The other place you can add white is to the just green, and that gives you that kind of minty color. So you're going to be vacillating between this minty color, or alternating right here, and that kind of yellow white in the white. And I still need to leave room for snow. So those are the colors that I'm mixing up. I'm going to go from my darkest. That is the dark green, which was phthalo green, burnt sienna, just together. Phthalo green and burnt sienna, and then add yellow to lighten it, go over it, right? Then add yellow and brown again to make it a green gold for your lightest yellow gold, then white to that, and you can go back and add white to your original mix from that. So that's how we're going to go through it. You can see all that there is looking good. Got a brush stroke, got our color mixes down. We know what we're doing. Let's make this happen. Where do we start again? Burnt sienna and phthalo green. So I'm wanting to give you a halfway through encouragement and let you know that it can be a little hard to see the green going over your black, and you may question your life choices at this point in the painting. And I just want you to know it's okay. Hang in all the way to the end. When it shows up, it's almost like magic. Okay, now I'm going to add some yellow to that mix again, so you'll remember it is the phthalo green and burnt sienna, and then we're going to add a good nice amount of our cad yellow to that. This is where you're going to feel some relief. If you've been kind of like, oh, I'm not really sure I'm seeing the pine needles, so we'll just go slow for a second here. Watch this. I'm going to bring this out, and you'll start to see them. I think I may maybe even want to yellow up from here. Just one more up, because I want some contrast. And you'll start to see the color layer out, and when you do, you will feel better. Now, a little tip, what you paint last over a line is what is on top. It's what layers on top. So if I were to come here and paint this yellow on here, that's what's on top. That's the next layer up of pine needles, right? So if I come on here, that's the next layer. So that's what I'm preserving. So if I wanted to come up and put a layer back them, I might do this. See how I'm coming backwards, and that allows, I'm exaggerating this, but it's happening in the brush stroke. See how that layering where I start at the bottom and build up creates a scaling? That's an, it's almost an invisible thing that happens, artists just fall into as we paint for a while, and you might not even be able to see it on cameras and stuff, but knowing that it's happening and that I'm coming here and I am layering these so that they layer like scales will help you even when you're not sure. Let's go through and layer it like scales, my friend. Layer it like scales. Don't paint out all of your good work. Shadows are just as important as light. Well, now we're starting to actually see our tree take shape. Let's get our extra yellow in that mix. Remember that again? And then we're going to add some of that brown to take us to that green gold. Let's get this going on this. I'm going to slow down and paint even more specifically. Really think about these pine needles as they layer, and you can kind of see I capture them where I can. You had no idea that there was so much color in a pine needle, but there is. It's not that art is hard and beginners can't do it. It's not that you guys can't follow, making a lighter green. You absolutely can. It's sometimes just that you don't know what's involved. Once you see it, you can do it. Take a look at your painting and, evaluate. Am I happy with the colors that I see? Do I like how the lightens and darks? There's a lot you can change right now. You're not so super deep into it that you can't change anything. I think I'm going to want to come in and back into my original greens. I'm going to add a little more of my phthalo green to my green gold mix. And then I'm going to get into my white, a little yellow, and I'm going to make a very, very light color for some super light pine needles. You can see I'm just looking for it. I'm adding more yellow till I find one that, it just makes my brain happy. That's what I'm looking for. Something that makes my brain happy. And I can always come out here and test it on here and be just like, are you what I'm looking for? And I'm like, oh, you are what I'm looking for. So then I just go once I know. All right, let's look at that. So at this stage, what we should have is just a very nice tree that looks like it's got some still heavy weighted pine needles on it, even in this depth of winter. These tree branches look like they could hold snow, and that's really what we've got to do is we've got to finish out the snowing component of the tree. So what I'm going to be doing, and I'll show you here, is that I'm going to be adding some snow on top of those branches, and that will go something like a little ultramarine blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of a light blue, a little bit of a burnt sienna and white in stages of gray. So let's get the first gray. So I might come here and on top of a tree branch, I kind of press my brush down to make the little clumpy spaces that kind of look like the snow. And you may lose some of your upward needles. Not all of them, but some of them. You know, and then I can come in with a lighter value of snow. And it'll be like 3 values. It'll go some version of, you know, all this here, and then I'll come over the top again. And then again with a 3rd level. And those 3 values will then build up the snow. So it'll be like the light value. Might even come really close to white. But we're going to be kind of working between those 3. So I'll show you how we're going to do it. I'm going to make my little... Still want it maybe even a little bit lighter than this, because this is sort of our focus. So let's start here. But we need to give ourselves room to go up to white. All right. So I'm going to come here and say that there's some snow right on this branch. I actually do try to paint it sort of carefully. It's not too terrible. What I try to imagine is how the branch catches that snow, and I try to imagine parts of it exposed and parts of it sheltered by other branches so that there's an irregularity to the snow collecting. Once you have the snow laid out how you like it, landing on the branches where you feel like it would be, you're going to want to dry everything, and then we're going to come back and add another layer. And that's because you can generally paint this particular step faster than your paint might dry. You may not, but you might. So that's why we're going to dry here before we go into the next step. So now that this is all dry, I can keep layering in, and it would be a good idea to put out the fluid acrylic I mentioned at the beginning of the lesson and put it to the side. Now this is a great tool for so many things. You could use, you don't have to use this specifically. You could thin your white paint, but this is ultra pigmented and it's already thin, so it makes some jobs a little bit easier. I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to very finely make sure that I add some needles that have snow. Not too many, just some. You can also come and add a little highlight to some of the snow on your branches. Head to the top of my canvas now and just work this down. I want you to notice as we're working together that I'm not painting over all of what I've already done. I'm leaving plenty of my work underneath showing through. So be sure you're leaving your work showing underneath. Okay. Now that we have gone through and individually frosted these needles, I can come back with my white paint. It can be pure white or not quite pure white. Like sometimes it's nice to drop like, oh, just a hint of phthalo into it just to cool it up. And let's come up to the top. I've got my round brush still, and I'm going to make lumpy little highlights that help show the snow. I don't paint over everything that I've already painted. I leave lots of snow still in the shade, still cool. And I'll build up snow on branches. Now take a second and take in your tree where it is. And for the next step, what we're going to do is we will add little shadows along the bottom of the branches collecting on the snow. We will darken the back of the tree, lighten the front of the tree, piece out some of these branches with more black lines, improving their shadows. Going to add some shading to the rocks like through here and then continue to build up on the snow. It's sort of a general going around and being like, do you need a shadow? Do you need a highlight? let's go through and hit the snow first, and then I'll show you what you're going to do next. So I'm going to come here and grab a little of my my blue and my burnt sienna. And I'm going to shade the base of some of the snow. As soon as I have a shadow on the base of the snow, I'm going to get my black paint on my brush. I'm still using my number 6 Raphael Sepia round. And I'm going to come behind the tree. I'm going to make little kind of dashing marks. And I'm going to deepen in shadows where I think branches need to be defined a little more. Or where I want a deeper value on my tree. So I've added a little shadow back where I lost it. I want to add a little shadow to the front of the rock. I'm just going to use my black paint and my round brush to kind of encourage a little bit of a shadow there. Oh, looking pretty good. I'm not minding that very much at all. And then I want to come through with my white to highlight branches that need a highlight. And then I want to come through with my white to highlight branches that need a highlight on their snow, to fix any highlights on the tree that I need. I'm going to want to add a white kind of highlight to the top of the snow clumps, and it'll work something like this right here, where I'm not so much of white lining as adding a little focus. See, I'm just popping to the top. It'll work something like this right here, where I'm not so much of white lining as adding a little focus. See, I'm just popping to the top. You can see I wander my lines up and down. It helps like piece out some of the snow. It's not a thing you have to do, but sometimes this little touch is pretty nice. All right. Now let's dry everything. We can come back. I'm going to show you what we're doing next. So this step is one that I find new painters, and sometimes very experienced painters, don't really love. And I'll say it's not as controversial as, say, glitter, but it has its moments. And it is the splatter technique to make snow. So there are a couple ways that you can do this. I will show you the non-messy way and then my way, which is the messy way. And you can decide what works best for you in your life. So first is a non-messy way. I have my fluid paint out. I'm going to take my detail brush and I'm going to just very carefully put out little dots at random points, right? So sometimes they'll be together, sometimes they'll be open, and that creates kind of a nice snow effect that you can do by hand. Or you can use a brush like this. Now this is a brush. This is my splatter brush from my old set. I don't have them available anymore. But I mean, honestly, if you just took a firm toothbrush that you wouldn't want to ever put in your mouth, that's probably what you would use on your canvas. So that's what I used to use. That's how I designed this one. And so any splatter you have. Also, I have a video about different ways to splatter. So if you're like, this isn't it for me, I have other ways to splatter. You can check that out or do the dot. Now I'm going to tap up and down into that fluid paint, and I'm going to come here and flick. I'm going to be a little heavier up here, kind of where I put the snowdrift up. I want it to be a little bit of a snowstorm. Now, splatter, if you over splatter, it can mess with the contrast and the value of your painting. So in this case, like less is more, and then having some concentration. And then if I want some bigger snowflakes, then I'll just take my brush and very carefully make bigger dots too. So you can even mash up a combination of splatter and brush work to get your snow effects where you want them. And it's just really up to you. But it is fun sometimes to have, you know, bigger gloops. See how these are gloompier bits of snow that are falling, because sometimes it clumps together on its way to the ground. Now I could sign this with, you know, bright color or something that really would pull the eye away, but I think I'm going to just take blue, and I'll just use my phthalo blue. And this is a number 2 precision liner, and I'll just make my little mark right here. There's a lot of opinions on signing paintings, and here's what I'll say. Of all of the arguments, and I've heard all the debates and all the different things that I've heard, the thing that's most important that I've ever heard is just remember that a signature or no signature is part of the composition of the painting. And so if you use a color or a technique or a style that is disruptive, you could, you know, ruin all your hard work by making an ugly signature. So maybe not, you know, something that pulls your eye right here with a big, I don't know. But it's not even that I write my name tidy. I don't write my name tidy. I just try to write it in a color that doesn't pull the eye, that always looks like it's me, and it's somewhat legible. So you can be as serious or not serious about this as you want. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you what's next. Oh my gosh, guys, that was so fun. I hope you learned a lot about making a winter landscape. Now, don't forget to check the description down below where you get links to our website. Everything you saw here today is available in my store, so if you would like to come by and get that. We have the patron Zoom class tomorrow, so if you'd like to check that out, there is a try before you buy over on Patreon. So many fun things going on. I hope you enjoyed today's class. The website, theartsherpa.com, that's where you find the traceables. You could download this as a reference and print it out to look at. We try to make step-by-step little kind of micro instructions that match these. Those come out a little bit after. So there's a lot of work that goes into this and a lot of student resources. Questions. If you came here on replay or didn't get to your question, during the stream, during live chat, put it in the comments, and I check my channel every day. So chances are I find it. If you really, really need to know that I got it, you can also write us at support@theartsherpa.com. I cannot wait to see yours. I've got groups on Facebook where you can share. I've got a Discord. Everything is the Art Sherpa, so I'm super easy to find. And I'm excited to see your version of your snowy pine. Now, here's some very important messaging. I need you to be good to yourself. And I need you guys to be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.